must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to Punchline Africa TV, broadcasting all the way from Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya. Viewers, wherever you are in Africa, this is our Plan African station, a station that looks at African issues, what ails Africa, what kills Africa. How can we resolve our own problems without inviting any other person to come to this continent to bring us more headache? Do we have a lot of headache? Do we have progress? This time is Kenya. In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta has brought what we call a transformational agenda, an agenda that is going to take shape, that can bring Kenya by 2022 to world-class economy, to world-class health people, a universal health care, to world-class food security, to world-class affordable housing, and to increasing jobs through manufacturing and construction of houses. President Uhuru Kenyatta has stated that this is the most important aspect of his legacy, that he would like to leave a legacy in Kenya by having these items tackled. You in the county, wherever you are in this country, those representatives of ours, of the ones that are in those counties, one by one, wherever you were, in Kakamega, in Bungoma, in Turkana, in Moyale, in Mosabit, in Mandera, in Coast. Most of you know what we want to be done. We want to find out exactly at the other places, Taveta, Migori, Siaya, Kisumu, Eldoret, which is North UG, which is also Narok. We want to know what is supposed to be done. What can be done to change the lives of the people of those counties and other counties in Kenya? What can we do to change, to help the governors, the local people, the citizens? What can we do to improve our housing? What can we do to improve our food security, to have enough food such that the food can never be a problem to Africa at all? Year in, year out, or year out, year in, we are begging for donors to bring us relief food. Yet we have arable land that is underutilized. Why can't we look at the arable land and start changing methods of farming, methods, tools? How much do we need to change our food production? Britain is a quarter of this country. But Britain has enough food to keep itself for over 200 to 400 years. Our food storage, do we need to look at it? Our food preservation, do we need to look at it? To improve food security, you need to talk about all these things. And that's why President Uhuru Kenyatta has said, let's talk about them. Let's tackle them now, so that by 2022, we leave a legacy for others who will take politically the train and the leadership of this country, going on that route. Instead, what has happened in Kenya, people are not thinking of the Agenda 4. Is it because the Big 4 action plan, people don't know what they are supposed to do? Is it because the research is not enough? What is the value that you can get out of a good house? What is the value that you can get if the industry is near your home? How many of us think of creating some small cottage industries, fishing, ponds, creating a simple pond and getting fish that will grow in the pond? How many of us can think of good health care? How can we change our health care system in Kenya? How can it be changed? Can it be changed by merely all the time saying, this is what we want? Or can it be done in a different way? To think, to bring in such that every 50 to 100,000 people have got a doctor and a GP who can have a referral system to refer them to diseases that cannot be treated in those small clinics or small GPs, which are many hospitals. The onus is upon us, upon the people of Kenya, wherever they are, with the help of any other people. Our role as a television station and the media is to publicize these initiatives of the president. We publicize the media, tell it as it is, writing in digital platform, writing on our Facebook. Our numbers, several representatives all over the whole counties are busy as we talk, writing and talking about the Big Four. They are busy engaging in the Big Four activities to make sure that advocacy, campaign, publicity, to make sure that people are aware. We talk about food security. You can't have food security when you are cutting down all the trees. There will be no water. You can't have food security when you don't know whether there's water or this water is alkaline. When you see rhinos being transferred from places where water was not alkaline and taken to alkaline infested waters and they die, there is something wrong with the systems. So we need to come and talk about these things. We need to engage the citizens for them to choose what is available and what they want in their counties. Punchline Africa TV, therefore, engages the people every morning until the next coming several months. We shall be engaging people. We shall be talking about this Big Four. I now invite you to a clip that talks about the Big Four of the Jubilee administration. What can we do, and what can we do as citizens of Africa to help ourselves so that we don't get into a quagmire state that other countries find when they call for food, when they call for housing, when you see in South Africa, in Kenya, the slums mushrooming, Gorogocho, in Madare, in all these places. What can we do to elevate the lives of the people in those slum-affected areas? I invite you to the clip prepared by Punchline Africa TV as a matter of publicity for this Big Four.
Diplomatic ties were established between our countries. That was respectively on the 17th and 18th December. And I believe that our meeting is going to give an additional impetus to strengthening our relationship. Of course, our priority is the development of trade and economic ties, as well as ensuring a stable increase in our trade. In 2018, we saw an increase in the indicators. It was an increase of 1.2%. I refer to our bilateral trade. And we are very glad that some companies have managed to establish a solid position in the Kenyan market, and I do hope that we'll talk about that in detail today. Thank you.
Russia-Africa Economic Forum and Summit, I believe, will present not just Russia and Kenya, but Russia and Africa with significant opportunities to really reshape and expand our relations, both at the bilateral level, as I said, the multilateral level, but also to rekindle, in your own words, the historic relations between Russia and Africa. Indeed, again, as you have stated, Africa's aspirations for freedom and liberty was greatly enriched by the relationship with Russia. Our founding fathers, including my own father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, drew great vision from the Soviet Union, and for that, we remain grateful. Your Excellency, to preserve this history and heritage, indeed, one of the requests I'm going to put to you is we would like you to facilitate a coalition and retrieval of some of the information and material that may be here in Russia relating to the activities and the histories of Kenya's freedom fighters, including that of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. This is something that we would truly appreciate, and at some stage would like to send some of our officials to work with your own historians and archivists to see what we can do to put that history together and preserve it for posterity. Mr. President, I also believe that this forum you have organized offers, again, Russia and Africa the opportunity to focus on ways and means of expanding our political, economic, technical, cultural, and educational interests in a manner that serves both our countries and promotes Russia's partnership with the African Union.
Viewers, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the President of the Republic of Kenya, has 37 months left for his term of office to end. We conducted an opinion poll on key tenets of what can be done within the 37 months. We looked at the economy, corruption, judiciary, security, unity of purpose, politics of 22, the referendum, the handshake, reconciliation, the Big Four agenda, dialogue with Somalia, democracy in Kenya, constitutionalism in Kenya, media status in Kenya, what the citizens want, preferred, talked about, international relations of this country, Kenya, and finally, we looked at the leadership style of His Excellency the President, what people thought about it, the cabinet, the opinions that came out about the cabinet of the current cabinet of President Uhuru Kenyatta, the opinion about the church in Kenya, what the church is in Kenya, and the opinion about 20 items listed, the debt, the rising debt of the Republic of Kenya, the debt that people have, the debt that the government and the people of Kenya have to pay as a result of the money that they borrowed for infrastructure, reconstruction, manufacturing, the food, and the infrastructure. We looked at all these items, and we came to a conclusion that in 37 months, there's quite a lot that must change. But there are key factors that stand out within the 37 months of the leadership and the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta. To leave a legacy, the president needs to look at items and narrow down some of the items that can be achievable, and those that can be improved, and those that can be left for the next government to work on and continue working to stabilize this country called Kenya. The most outstanding items that most people talked about with the highest percentage were judiciary, economy, corruption, unity of purpose, referendum, the handshake, and democracy, plus the church and the debt that was alarming most of the Kenyans. But behind these alarms and behind this scenario, one factor stands out for President Uhuru Kenyatta. He has set the ball rolling in the direction that, yes, a handshake that he took a position to take. It's very rare in Africa for a winner to think of the loser, and the loser to think of the winner, and then the winner also to incorporate in some of the activities, not fully in government, but in terms of handshake. President Uhuru Kenyatta stands out within the 37 months left to cement the question that Kenyans want to look at the judiciary, to look at the at the constitution. Are there some things in the constitution that need to change? If you look at the fight between the governors and the MCAs, between the governors and the central government, devolution has worked very efficiently. Most people did not want even to say much because they needed the services. But the amount of the corruption in the developed units has worried most Kenyans. So can we, in the next, as Kenyans, can Kenyans look at this and find out and take note what they can help the President of Republic of Kenya to improve on, to achieve within the 37 months. I know it is a hard, a long, tall order. It's a tall order that can bring about difficulties, but it has to be achieved. A legacy must be left, especially on the question of unity of purpose, especially on the question of fighting corruption. At least leave a legacy by fighting corruption, unity, creating a united Kenya, bringing about good social standing of the people of Kenya, and above all, cleaning the judiciary such that it can help Kenyans in resolving the contentious issues. You have done very well on international relations, and international relations need to be encouraged more. But the question of Somalia brings a lot of hiccups. The best way to resolve it lies in your credentials as the President of the Republic of Kenya. The legacy goes on, is in and on track. Thank you, viewers.
very good morning to you, and welcome to Good Morning Africa show, coming to you from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. It is another wonderful day here in Nairobi, very sunny. Seems like the good weather has returned. We are done with the cold that and the rains that we had in the couple of few last months. And now we are enjoying the weather gearing towards the holiday, which around the city, it's already in a very festive mood when you walk around the malls and people are traveling, and it's very busy here. So yeah, Kenya and indeed Nairobi, we are gearing up, and we are ready to welcome the festive season. But you know what? We are still a few weeks away from that. So right now, we're still busy in the business of, letting us know what is happening here in Kenya and indeed across of Africa, and we will get to that. But first off, my name is Miriam Ogutu, and thank you so much for joining me. Dr. Matanga is not here with us, might join me before the end of the show. He's still caught up doing a few things and that are important and urgent he needed to do this morning. So if he's able to finish on time, he shall join me. If not, then it's okay. We shall continue with our show. So thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who have already started engaging with us, just keep it there. I shall come back and we will talk about what is making headlines across Africa. But this morning, I want to look at one of the topics that we have today. Of course, we normally love looking at and keeping, looking at what is President Uhuru Kenyatta doing in line to the Big Four agenda that he presented to Kenyans in his second term. This is something that he campaigned on. Remember, the first term that he came into power, he had also so much that he had promised together with his deputy, president, Mr. William Ruto, or Dr. William Ruto, they had so much things that they had promised Kenyans. But of course, in his first term, President Uhuru Kenyatta was not able to meet some of the things that he had promised, because remember, when he came to power, he had this case he was fighting at the ICC, and so a lot of things did not perhaps work out well as the president would have wanted then. So because much time was wasted there and other things, and it is his government from his first term that Kenya was actually going to implement the new constitution. So it was just a lot of things and challenges that President Uhuru Kenyatta had to deal with and had to figure out, even us as a country, especially in matters devolution. So first year was quite a rough run for President Uhuru Kenyatta. So Kenyans are wondering what is the first of the promises that he made in the first term. We didn't see this and we didn't see that, and sometimes people say things or mean things, but when it comes to implementation, you realize, it could be a bit more challenging. And I think to some extent, the government has come out and said, some of those things, as much as we really have wanted it to happen to this country, and we wanted really to make sure that we deliver to Kenyans, but there are some challenges that we did not foresee, and that's okay. So in his second term, President Uhuru Kenyatta came out and said now, as his legacy for the next 5 years, he made a 4-year plan, a 4-point plan that he said will be implemented over the 5 years that is his second time in office. And he dubbed that Big Four agenda when they were campaigning. That is the Jubilee Party for the elections that led to the 2017 general elections. And of course, by now you already know, and if not, then the content of the Big Four agenda: affordable housing, universal healthcare, manufacturing, food security. We've seen the problems that we have in the past in Kenya here in terms of food security. We're still experiencing some. In fact, when you see the sunshine like this, it's just a couple of months away before you start hearing some places like Turkana, food shortage and other places. And so it has been a challenge, but so far I think we're trying to do our best. But also, one of the key things that has been really disrupting this vision of food security in this country, obviously, is corruption. We saw how farmers, especially from the Rift Valley province, which is the food basket of this country, the cartels had taken over the food production in that region, be it the fertilizers that the subsidized fertilizers that the government had bought in, and so that the farmers could get them on time, and as well, at a good price, to make sure that their supported, because those are some of the promises when President Uhuru Kenyatta was looking and considering food security. Those are just some of the things that he was perhaps hoping would help in making sure to boost the farmers and to help in whichever way, and to make sure that this country is food secure. But unfortunately, we've seen how cartels in these areas, and of course people are just going behind the back of the government, and especially President Uhuru Kenyatta, who we've seen to be very frustrated over some of these issues. And we've seen maize being imported from outside the country, while the farmers' maize are being rotting in the granaries. So it was just hectic, especially from the beginning of this year. And there had been some calls when we saw the Minister of the CS for Agriculture coming out and saying, you know what, the country has this amount of maize bags still left in the storage, but the country needs this much. So now we want to bring in some maize from outside the country. And then there is this, I can't remember, this body that is mandated in looking at the food security in the country that came out and said, no, we still have food in the storage for Kenyans. We still have this much amount of food that will cover this much months. And by the time this is over, the new harvest would have come to the market. So Kenyans don't have to worry about it. So it became a back and forth. And of course, the underbelly of corruption, and how perhaps even the ministry that is mandated in making sure that Kenyans are food secure and our farmers are secured and made sure that they're okay, that exposed a lot of rot in that ministry that is supposed to be there and working for Kenyans and making sure Kenyans have enough food, and for those who are producing this and for the farmers are taken care of. So that was a lot. And so it ended up the maize was not brought into the country. I've not heard any maize shortage anywhere. I've not seen the price of unga go up significantly. I don't know, I hardly check the price of the unga in the supermarkets. That's perhaps I eat very little garlic, perhaps, twice a week or so. But this is a staple food for Kenyans. So it is important that the maize price is regulated or is sold in the manner that which Kenyans can afford their staple food every time they go to the supermarkets or to their stores to get this. And also the farmers who put so much into farming and getting this, farming the maize and other products and produce that Kenyans need, actually get a good return for the investment that they make. So it was some good news a couple of days ago when it was announced that the government will be buying. Now a bag of maize is selling at a good price compared to what was being sold when the market had been flooded with food from outside the country. And so farmers were going at a loss. And you know, it takes a lot of work and a lot of money buying fertilizers, hiring, the tractors that come to plow the land and things like that. So farmers were almost giving up, farming. And we've seen that happen in some parts of the country who some farmers are turning even tea farms into real estate because they're saying there's no much return in the tea industry or coffee industry or other industries. Or we've seen some maize, even, the sugar industry in Kenya being affected, but that is due to the cartels and the corruption that has been happening over a long period of time that some of it President Uhuru Kenyatta just when he came into power were already happening. So that's having been taken care of, and I think the stand that the government took, saying we shall not allow any food from outside until our farmers have sold everything, and until we cannot get any more inside the country, then we can allow. So that has gone to cushion the farmers, which I think is a good thing. And if the government continues to take such measures, then it will make more people and more Kenyans, because a huge part of this country is land that is very fertile, and it's very sad that we get to experience the parts of the country faces famine, while the rest of the bigger chunk of the country could actually be engaged the very arable lands and produce more, so that even the surplus can go to the other parts of the country that perhaps are not able to do that because of the conditions of the land, the rainfall and the climatic conditions in those areas. So Still, Kenya is not a country that still should be making headlines over famine and lack of food and all that. So it has been. Sometimes you look at those images over a period of time, and you see maybe around February, March, the Red Cross would want to come out for Kenyans to chip in, for Kenyans to. I don't want to see such images again. So can we secure this food security first, so that Kenyans are fed, Mr. President? When you have a country that is fed and a people that is fed, they can start listening to other things. I think food security is very, very important. And so I'm happy that President Uhuru Kenyatta saw that it was important enough for him to have put it as one of his big four agendas. So now we need the implementation of some of the things that would come to making sure that this very important thing is realized. And first, let's just get rid of the cartels that are making it very difficult for farmers to get the good returns for their produce, and also, let's get sort of the CS for the Ministry of Agriculture really should just get into working and making sure that this country and the people that are mandated with that, they get to do what they are supposed to be doing, and making sure that Kenyans are okay, the farmers are okay, who are putting a lot of input in this, farming. It takes a lot. It's a lot of money. So if you've spent a whole 3-4 months, and then no one is taking, your produce, and then you hear some cheap produce is coming in from whatever country. There's a time, I don't know, there was like a maize shortage, but that was man-made. And I remember us being told the maize was coming from where? From Mexico. And what was very interesting is that as soon as it was announced that the maize was coming from Mexico, I don't know how many days it should take for maize to come from Mexico and then to come to the Mombasa, harbor there. But it took less than a week and the maize was here. So that means the maize was just somewhere here. So I think they were trying that earlier sometimes back this year. And I think the government came out. So I think the government should be very, very strict and should really continue making sure that the farmers in this country are cushioned. We need to support our farmers, because nowadays, just this morning, we've seen another company closed this morning, and it's very tough times here in Kenya, and people now are starting to resort into farming, because, as I said, a lot of land here in Kenya is arable. So people are deciding, you know what, since I don't have a job, let me take this skill or this information that I have, perhaps enter into agriculture and start farming, and this will be a source of employment. But if you will continue reading such headlines and this cartel industry, because cartel is its own industry here in Kenya, so it has been very difficult to get rid of. Ask Mike Sonko. You remember before he became the governor of Nairobi, he made these wonderful promises. He'd get rid of the cartels in the water ministry, in the Nairobi water sector and this sector, and then he came in and he realized, oh no, it's not that simple. So this cartel industry in this country, you find them in all sectors. They are really working towards negating any gains that Kenyans would want to see. So that is that. So that is under the food security. So we are hoping to see more. And as a Kenyan, I'm just hoping come February, March, I don't want to see those images of the undignified images of people from Turkana or Pokot going through the famine that we see happening earlier this year. I'm hoping that the government and the Ministry of Special Programs are already putting in measures, and making sure that come this, they have looked at the statistics, they know, and come those months, they would have made plans to make sure that no Kenyans should die or will be affected in the degree that they were during the sunny period, that is normally between January, February, March. It's normally very hot here in the country. And so I'm just hoping that the government and together with the county governments, we cannot let you go off the hook. And as we were talking here earlier this year, and of course those images coming from Turkana, and we were just wondering, so as much as we would see it and say, okay, so what is Kenya doing? So Kenya should not be dying of famine in the 21st century, which is all true. But also that is why we have developed devolution. So in my opinion, I think that the governor of Nanook in that regard, I think, failed his people because he understands better. That is why we had devolution, so that the leadership is able to be closer, to the people, so that they are aware and they're in touch with what really is the priorities and the things and the agendas and the issues that affect their people. That is why we have the makers of our new constitution. That is what they had envisioned. So I think in this regard, as much as we would sit and, criticize the national government for doing or for the lack of, but also to some degree, I think that county governments must now realize that they are in control, that they have the responsibility to make sure that some of these matters that concerns their people are addressed. And something like the famine or what the governors and the leadership of the different counties are supposed to have had prior information or prior, whatever kind of information they need to know, and then they will coordinate with the national government through the ministries that are responsible to take care of some of these things. And also, so it's done, it's mitigated before it balloons into a bigger problem, and we see these very undignified photos of our people making, like, it's embarrassing, and sometimes I feel sad as a Kenyan. So we don't want to see that. So the CS for Agriculture, I hope you're taking notes, and the different governors from these counties that normally are affected by this, I hope you're taking notes. So you know what? Let's just help and see. We all have we all have a part to play in able to realize some of these goals and some of these things, as a country. So that is just on the food security, of course. Before I just came in, they were playing the Big Four agenda from, the office of the president here in Kenya. And of course, it touched on the food security, which I've talked about, and also the manufacturing. And something also very important, the universal healthcare, which is a proclamation that was made by the World Health Organization and by the United Nations, that all member states in the United Nations, they have a time frame that they should be able to make sure that their citizens are able to get the basic healthcare, at least the basic healthcare at an affordable price, or even for free. Like we saw that first being implemented by the former president, before President Uhuru Kenyatta, Mwai Kibaki, and it started by making sure that children under the age of 5 years, get free basic treatment here in Kenya. When you go to any public clinic or hospital or facility, you don't pay much when you're taking a child there for a treatment of malaria or flu or the basics, like you don't pay. You really, maybe you'll pay 20 shillings, which is like what? A few cents, dollars, but you don't pay. It's free. Okay, so I started with the President Mwai Kibaki, who started implementing that, and then on top of that, mothers who go seeking for prenatal health care, you don't pay for the visits at the local government institutions. So that was a good thing. So when President Uhuru Kenyatta came into power and he introduced the free maternity, services, and that was helping in curbing the mortality rate between mother and child, and which has come down very significantly, because there are places in this country where mothers used to, in the 21st century, used to still give birth in the slums, in the homes, in the villages, because the cost of health or the cost of delivery was, as much as it was not very high, but it is is not affordable for a lot of homes or a lot of people who live under $1 a day, who are still struggling. So you wonder, do I go to the hospital and pay for this, or do I buy food and feed the other kids? So the free maternal health care, I think, really has brought a smile and help, save a lot of lives that otherwise would have been lost through the lack of affording to go to a better hospital, because you cannot afford. Nowadays, you just go to a public hospital, have your baby, and go home, and you receive a proper, qualified care from this. I think that is a very, very good thing that the people of this country, especially the mothers, and even, the men who sometimes end up paying this bill, bills, I think they appreciate. And so that is a very good thing. So we're just hoping that before President Uhuru Kenyatta leaves office, remember, he had chosen the government has chosen a few counties to run a mock, trial of the universal healthcare, other things that are going to be introduced. And so we're still waiting to, I think, was it supposed to take a place, I think a year or so? I can't recall the exact timeline. So we're waiting to see at the end of the day, what will be the report? Was it a success? What are some of the lessons that was able to be gathered from this I don't want to call it an experiment, because these are people's lives, don't experiment, but for this trial that the government had in different counties over the universal healthcare, because that is also one of the paramount things that he has in his Big Four agenda. And in this way, they will be able to be in line with the United Nations universal healthcare proclamation of making sure that every member state in the United Nations is able to provide for its citizens the affordable healthcare, especially on basic health. So that also, we are waiting, Mr. President, to know what is happening in these counties that you chose to run a test over the universal healthcare, and what are some of the services that are being given and I hope in all this, there was some consideration that was taken, especially in regards to cancer treatments and things, because cancer now has become a problem, not just here in Kenya. In the recent times, cancer has become the number one killer, and the people who are suffering the most are people from the backgrounds who cannot afford, proper healthcare, because treating cancer is very, very expensive. And so I'm hoping that in all totality, that was considered, and perhaps they should introduce subsidies in government institutions where people can go for chemotherapy or things like that, and maybe increase even these centers across the different counties. So this also will require the working together of the national government together with the county governments. But unfortunately, there has been some logo. I think there's a time the national government imported some medical equipment. I don't know, it did not consult with I don't know. It was just a whole, so there are equipments that are still in some counties that have never been operated because others lack specialists to operate them. Others are just lying there, but the country is still paying for this, equipment. So there's need for a cooperation between the national government and the county governments to realize that these services are being implemented and the people who need these services are able to get them. So there has to be a working together between the national government and the county government to make sure that these things actually run efficiently and Kenyans are able to benefit from these very important services that they require. And we've seen the housing project. It's taking off in some few places in this country. And so we're just waiting to see perhaps the end of this month, perhaps, I don't know, we need some update from, the office of the president and know how far and what is the government doing and what have they been able to achieve and what is happening, how many houses are available. I've seen the prices of those houses. I don't know if a poor Kenyan can afford, but you know what, if over time now they're able to actually come up with structures that somebody in Kibra can, even if it's not just a big house, just a small, even if it's a 2-roomed house, but it's decent with a toilet, neat and running water, that is decent enough, and compared to the shanties that they live in and the lack of toilets, a place like Kibra. So it doesn't have to be a glorious, wonderful apartment, no, but it should be decent and should meet at least people should live in a dignified place. So as much as this is good and is continuing, but now I'm hoping that perhaps the president has other plans or other models that are a bit affordable to the lower end person, so that with time we also have a dream and a plan to get rid of this slum. We are not proud to know that in Kenya, that's where we have the biggest slum in Africa. That is not something that I want to sit here and take pride in. It is the 21st century. Our people should be living in a dignified environment. So this affordable housing is good, but as much as it's quite very much affordable compared to other houses, in the real estate here in Kenya, they're quite affordable, especially when you see the places that they are situated. There's one near my neighborhood. So when you look at the price there and the other houses, they're actually quite cheaper compared to, they're quite cheaper, but for a certain class of Kenyans, to be very honest. So we need also something and also a plan, Mr. President, that will try to sort out the slums in this country, a housing project that will be inclusive, that will actually help in getting rid of mushrooming slums, and that will help in improving urban living for the very low end Kenyans there. So I hope that that is part of your plan, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in ensuring that Kenyans live a dignified life in the bigger scheme of things when it comes to the affordable housing. So that is just about it. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. I see a lot of you writing here, so let me just go through some of your topics. And Chol Makoro, thank you so much. You're saying Kitale, as granary of Kenya, is so fertile to produce enough maize for Horn of Africa. That is so true. And you know what is so sad, Chol Makoro, and thank you so much for pointing that out. That part of Kenya, Kitale, and a huge chunk of the Rift Valley, that is the food basket of this country. But what was very unfortunate when now these stories were coming out, and the cartels that had imported maize from doctor said he even has some receipts, some evidence that a lot of leaders, or some people, or cartels, or whichever, these people that are involved, brought in maize from Uganda, because we also know Uganda produces a lot of surplus with maize, and also maize there is a staple food. So the same way it is here in Kenya and also Tanzania, some people also tried bringing maize from there. So you wonder, and yet our farmers had already gone in so much and put in a lot of, a lot in their farms to make sure that the government can come, because in the past they've worked like that. They will take it to the government granaries, and it will be bought, and it will be fed to the rest of us who are here and waiting for the farmers there to work hard and make sure we buy their produce. So it's a shame, and I'm happy that the second time round, the government was able to come in and mitigate this and make sure that no maize comes from outside. That happened. Remember, we were having here through the Ministry of CES, and it almost became something else. But I'm happy. So we're just hoping, because right now I think farmers are about to harvest, or are harvesting thereabout in December, I think. So just hoping that nothing will go to waste, because we don't want stories of Kenyans, dying of famine, while the other side of the country has so much in surplus that is going to waste. That does not make any sense at all. So the people responsible, I'm hoping that they already have plans in place, and they'll take care of this. And James Mukuria, you're saying food security is part of President Kenyatta's Big Four agenda. Can you say something about the Galana Kulalu debacle in relation to that? Look at that, because even the dams scandals that now they are all Kimorer and others, and Galana Kulalu, but this project, Red Cross was the ones who had the mandate to do this. Nobody's talking about the billions that got lost in that Galana Kulalu. And I think earlier this year, when famine was being experienced in Turkana, and the Red Cross boss, Mr. Abbas, came out and started asking Kenyans to contribute. Kenyans are like, oh no, we contribute. Please, can you give us a report over the Galana Kulalu, dam? So it is such a shame. And when you go there and see nothing was ever done in those farms, I think that it is an Israeli company that was mandated. So I don't know what really happened there, but it's such a shame. And a country like Israel is a country that we could borrow a lot and learn a lot. That country is basically a desert. But if you want the best fruits, some of the best vegetables, they come from that side of the world. Like, we have a way better weather compared to Israel. We have way better, what conditions that would encourage very productive agriculture compared to Israel. But I don't know who cast Africa especially around this place. I just don't even understand. So Galana Kulalu, I think, was a great embarrassment, especially to the Red Cross. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that these people will be held responsible. So when Mr. Basculate came out early in February, I think February, March, and he said, okay, so we need to have a fundraising so that we Kenyans come together, Kenyans for Kenyans, because that is how such an initiative had been dubbed earlier, to try and give and help and buy food so that the people who have been affected by famine could be, taken care of. And Kenyans are like, no, we're not doing that this time round. We've been doing it for over the years. We are tired. We want action, and also we want our, heads rolling and somebody to tell us what happened to the money that was poured and that was put aside to, help Galana Kulalu, dams. Those are some of the things that are supposed to make sure that in such places where there's not favorable weather conditions, there could be irrigation there so that people there can start farming in other parts of the country. But look at what happens here. So that was that. Ogebe Omoto-chan, guten Morgen to you. You're watching from Germany. Thank you so much for watching, and we appreciate your support this morning. So we're just looking at the first part of the show. So right now, a lot is happening throughout Kenya. Outrage over census as 27 constituencies face axe. That is according to the Standard newspaper. And it is saying comprehensive coverage on what 2019 data means for population, politics, resource allocation, and boundary review. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Defense Statistics as above board. And if you want to know that story, go to page 6, 7, and 8. And also members of parliament vote will with banks to return expensive loans. Okay, now this one I have to read. And it says a big victory for bankers after members of parliament failed to turn up in good number to protect Kenyans from high interest rates. Lenders now have a blank check to charge as they deem fit. Look at these members of parliament. All right. So if you want to know more about that story, go to page 9 of the Standard newspaper. So we go to the Daily Nation, where a point of no return in NASA's bitter fallout. There seems to be a problem there at the opposition in this country, the NASA coalition. And it continues to say that coalition now on its deathbed as partners go for each other's jugular. So that is on page 5 in the Kenyan in the Daily Nation. I wanted to say in the Kenyan Constitution. No, in the Daily Nation, one of the leading newspapers here in Kenya. And of course, all the major opposition coalition partners have also, I think this was brought up by the by-election that is happening now in Kibra, that there are places where the coalition, even in the previous elections, decided, you know what, since this appears to be a strong turf of a certain party, so let's not file candidates. These other partners in NASA or in Jubilee, let's not file a candidate there. But so perhaps Raila was expecting that because, Kibra has been considered for a very long time to be a Raila area, but other coalition partners came out and said, no, we want to file our partners, our candidates here. And so this just brought out, the ugly underbelly of what is expected in the Kenyan politics. And now that threatens to divide the opposition coalition there. And now, according to the Daily Nation, this coalition is on its deathbed. And so if you want to know more about that story, go to page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And also on the side there, NAT tells of a TAC of applause to kill the union. And teachers' body rejects notice by employer to terminate a collective bargaining agreement over a number of members insisting it has a majority. Oh my goodness. The Kenya National Union of Teachers and the Teacher Service Commission, they have been at it. I think the all of this year, somebody needs to come in and just help end this matter there. And the story is on page 8 and 9 of the Daily Nation. And the Nairobi coast record highest rise in numbers. Census shows huge disparity in population growth across the region. Yes, and yesterday you were looking at something else. I think Kenyans had a go with it on social media, making fun and memes and all that, and just trying to understand the statistics after the census was carried out here in August. The statistics and the results were given out 2 days ago, and Kenyans have been having a day with it. And still on the front pages of the Daily Nation, Mike Sonko's chaotic date at the EACC. Mike Sonko seems to be a besieged man, and the Nairobi governor, Mike Sonko, is a man under siege. All right. So yesterday, he appeared before EACC investigators for allegedly lying in his self-declaration forms when he sought clearance to contest for the governorship. In the forms, Mr. Sonko claimed he had no past criminal record. The detectives who questioned him for over 3 hours are said to have asked him about his past remarks that he is a reformed criminal. But why are they doing that now? Mike Sonko is not new in the political field in this country. Did they not look at the credentials while they were considering the leadership and integrity, under the Constitution of Kenya? But he was still cleared. So why is it over 2 years as the governor of this country, now they want to bring this up? And before him being a governor, he was a senator for this city. So I just don't understand. So there seems to be a lot of politics behind that. But there you go, Mike Sonko, they are in trouble. And I think he galvanized his support group yesterday, and they were all over town there, the CBD of Nairobi, trying to have him released, or I don't know, they're just in support of him. So he seems to be a man under problems there. And on the front pages of the Star newspaper, 40 constituencies could be scraped after 2019 census. And you know what? At this point, I think this will be good for the country. Those are 40 less wages that Kenyans have to pay. Those are 40 less members of parliament who don't even show up in parliament to pass these important bills on behalf of Kenyans. These are 40, members of parliament that Kenyans don't have to worry about. So you know what? So let's see how this will go. And I think no wonder the census report has been turned into a political debacle because they're just, some politicians cannot imagine. Maybe they feel like their constituencies are being targeted, and so it has turned into a political thing, which shouldn't be the case. And so, according to the reports, because that is how the country gets to plan, for the future, moving forward in the next 10 years. So they use the statistics from the census to allocate money, to plan for developmental agendas and things like that. So they have not been very happy from when this report came out 2 days ago. So now it appears, this is according to the Star, that the 40 constituencies could be scraped after 2019 census. And you know what? I'm really not mad at this. IEBC to use population results to decide new electoral units and boundaries. Okay, let's just wait and see there what will happen. And also, the change began as a ripple how former gangsters created a park. Okay, that is on page 1213 of the Star newspaper. Mudavadi, Raila is a political burden to Kenya. That is what Mudavadi said. And ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi yesterday launched a scathing attack on ODM leader Raila Odinga, describing him as the biggest political burden to the people of Kenya. The former finance minister also threatened to sue Raila for linking him to the Golden Bag scandal. Look at that. NASA is in problems. Okay, there you go. And also mentally unstable, University of Nairobi, Don, who kept son's body unfit for trial. So there is a university lecturer who kept her dead son in her house for more than 2 weeks. Now is not fit to be charged. Hannah Inyama was arrested last month after the body of her 13-year-old son was found wrapped in a blanket in her house in Nairobi's South B estate. A very sad story there. So, okay, so that is just on the front pages on what is making headlines across Kenya this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'll take a very short break, and when I return, now we can go back to the business of Africa, and I have a lot in store for you. We will look at the latest update about the Nile River dispute between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, and also what is happening there in Rwanda. And now Britain members of parliament are making some demands, towards President Paul Kagame, what is happening. And also in Zimbabwe, 74 doctors have been fired over strike, and as well as in Liberia, what is happening there, as there have been long queues in ATM machines. There's no liquid cash in Liberia. And in Somalia, floods continue to ravage the country. In Burkina Faso, France has come in to help mitigate the effects of Boko Haram in that country. And Cameroon, Human Rights Watch report right now has come out to commend the United States move to continue putting bans and pulling out of Cameroon. And we go to Nigeria, where another 259 people have been rescued from an Islamic rehabilitation center. And we'll go to Sudan now. And the Forces of the Freedom of Change, the coalition is now demanding for former President Omar al-Bashir to be taken to the ICC. Who are they speaking on their behalf? Who is pushing such agendas? What is happening in Sudan? What will be the fate of the former president? We will talk about that. And South Sudan, 6 days to go. I told you we'll be talking about South Sudan until people listen, until the leadership of South Sudan listen. And now, a surprise move by President Salva Kiir. Keep it here. I'll let you know what now President Salva Kiir is saying and is asking the Speaker of the National Assembly to do. And also... All right. And also in Biafra, there's some statements that has been made there. And former Speaker of Senate, Mr. Ike Ekweremadu, has now declared the Southeast that is not happy, and he's giving his own reasons and why Biafra is inevitable. And also in Cameroon, a court in Boya, southwest of Cameroon, that threw a journalist into custody, and now they're being told to produce the journalist, and they're unable to. There could be some signs that this journalist, his lawyers have tried to look for him. He's not there. Was he killed? What happened to this journalist that was arrested on August 2nd this year? And still in Cameroon today, President Paul Biya marks 37 years in power. Okay, we will talk about that. So we have a lot in store for you. Don't go too far. Good morning, Africa. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and I'm glad you're still here. Thank you so much, Bol Nyang. You're saying you're watching us all the way from Australia. Good morning. Is it good evening there? Thank you so much for joining us. And Dundi Uma, you're saying good morning, Punchline Africa crew, and a very good morning to you. A few minutes to noon here, perhaps 3 or 4 minutes to noon here. So thank you so much. Of course, James Mukuri, I think I answered your question. And Bol Nyang, you're saying good news for Kir. Good news for Kir. Okay, I'll let you know what Kir thinks is something that should be done at this very, a late hour, or, the end of, 6 days to unity, national unity, there, a government to be formed, but there's really not much to show for. But Mr. Salva Kiir has something that he thinks should be a priority right now, that he wants, Parliament, the Speaker of Parliament to do there in South Sudan. So just keep it here and we'll talk about it. And I'd really love to get your opinion in that. And prayers, amen. You're saying you're watching from London Bridge there from the United Kingdom. Thank you so much. Continue watching and engaging with me this morning. Well, a minute to noon here in Nairobi. So thank you so much. And now let's get into the business of Africa, and we start with the dispute on Nile River. And now foreign ministers from Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan are in the United States capital, Washington, D.C. for today's crunch talks on the controversial building of a mega dam along the River Nile. The Grand Renaissance Dam, under construction in northern Ethiopia, will become then completed after Africa's largest hydroelectric power station. But Egypt fears the project will allow Ethiopia to control the river's flow. The latest round of talks to be mediated by the U.S. Follows tough positions taken by the two countries that has seen previous meetings end without progress. And we move to Rwanda, where 6 British politicians have written to the Rwandan President Paul Kagame, calling for 2 former military officers to be released from prison. Frank Rusagara, who was once defense attaché to the UK, and Tom Byabagamba were arrested 5 years ago. They were charged with spreading rumors and tarnishing the image of Rwanda and its government. A military court sentenced them 20 and 21 years in prison, respectively. The politicians from Britain's upper and lower houses of parliament described the sentences as disproportionate, and they said they were concerned about the health of the detainees and asked President Kagame to release them on compassionate grounds. Compassionate grounds from an African leader. Okay, let's see how that will work out, and especially there in Rwanda. President Paul Kagame cannot stomach any sort of criticism. In fact, if you were a cartoonist there and you're a graphics person and you decide you want to bring humor, like I see here in Kenya, cartoonist or just, people making fun of the president every day. Like, it's not a big deal. We have enough space. Well, we're still working on it and trying to push the boundaries, but it is not something that will give President Uhuru Kenyatta a sleepless night, or any politician in this country sleepless night for that reason. But in Rwanda, even if you just made a cartoon that reflected the president in a bad light, you stand to face 7 years in prison. So look at that. Anyway, on to Zimbabwe, and the government of Zimbabwe has fired 77 doctors who have been taking part in a strike since September over pay. Last month, a court ruled that the strike was illegal and ordered them to go back, but they defied the ruling. Hundreds of doctors who were also on strike are waiting to know their fate, as the government looks determined to keep playing hardball. It seems unthinkable that they can all be fired, because the impact of the already struggling health service would be disastrous. And Zimbabwe is in the midst of an economic crisis and high inflation, and that has severely eroded people's earnings. And still on Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe state workers will go ahead with today's street protest after the government failed to give in to their demand for US dollar indexed salaries to cushion them against soaring inflation, union officials said Tuesday. Police have given the Apex Council of Public Sector Unions permission to march for better pay in what is widely seen as a test of President Emerson Mnangagwa's willingness to tolerate dissent after banning recent opposition protests. And we go to Liberia, where Liberians are stuck in long queues as cash machines, as many have run out at cash machines, as many have run out of banknotes. Customers trying to get money at bank counters have also complained they can't get Liberian dollars. The Ministry of Finance say there is not sufficient money in the vaults of commercial banks because people are keeping money at home. Something observers say is motivated by a lack of confidence in the banks. Liberia has had a problematic recent history with banknotes, and we shall look at that. And perhaps they should do what President Uhuru Kenyatta did here. For the people who kept money in their homes, we changed the currency. And we go to Somalia, where a major aid effort is underway to assist victims of flooding in Somalia, where 370,000 people have been displaced and 10 have died. One of the worst hit areas is Beledweyne, close to the border with Ethiopia, where videos show some residents neck deep in water or clinging to roofs with entire villages submerged. And we go to Burkina Faso, where France has announced the launch of a new joint military operation with Burkina Faso, a country suffering from nearly daily terror attacks. The French and Burkinabe soldiers are to be deployed in the coming days at the border with Mali and Niger, where several militant groups have been operating. Mali, Niger, increasingly Burkina Faso have been struggling to contain the spread of armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group, especially around the border areas. The situation has been particularly worrying in Burkina Faso, where attacks have claimed over 500 lives and displaced nearly 500,000 people since 2015. And we go to Cameroon, where international rights groups Human Rights Watch have welcomed a recent move by the United States to push the Cameroonian government to act on human rights abuses, especially among its security forces. According to a statement by the Central African researcher Lyberia Legrosi, stressed that despite Washington's move, there was the need for more global action on Cameroon. Before last week, announcement that the Trump administration intended to cut AGOA, which is the African Growth and Opportunities Act, trade benefits for Cameroon by January 1st, 2020, Washington had in February scaled back a security cooperation, citing persistent human rights violations in the country. So I think that is a move that all Ambazonians out there would very much so laud. And we go to Nigeria, where Nigerian police have freed 259 people from an Islamic rehabilitation center in the southwestern city of Ibadan, police said yesterday, taking the number rescued from abusive institutions since September to nearly 1,500. This is from September, like 2 months now, roughly 2 months now, right? This is worrying. We go to Sudan, where Sudan's Forces of Freedom and Change, the coalition movement behind the massive protests which engulfed the North African country, eventually leading to the ousting of former President Omar al-Bashir, has stated that it has no qualms about handing him over to the International Criminal Court to be tried for genocide. Bashir, who was forced out of office in April, has been wanted by the ICC for years for war crimes and crimes against humanity allegedly committed in Sudan's Darfur region. And we go to South Sudan, and with 6 days to go, and now President Salva Kiir has instructed the Speaker of the National Parliament to construct a new parliamentary facility that will accommodate additional members of Parliament. There are currently 450 members of Parliament at the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, but according to the revitalized peace agreement, the Parliament shall comprise of 550 members. The incumbent government shall nominate 332 members of Parliament. Seriously? While the SPLM-IO will nominate 128 members. Now, the South Sudan Opposition Alliance shall nominate to the Parliament 50 members. Other opposition parties shall have 30 members of Parliament, and the former detainees shall nominate 10 members of Parliament. Right now, the MPs conduct the sittings at the Freedom Hall, a huge white tent opposite Dr. John Garang Mausoleum in Juba. We will talk about this, And South Sudan, still, the National Pre-Transitional Committee has revealed that the government has provided over 40 million US dollars for implementation of the security arrangement during the meeting of parties to the peace accord in Addis Ababa in May this year. The government pledged to release 100 million US dollars to fund pre-transitional activities. And then we go to Biafra, where Ike Ekweremadu, former Deputy Senate President, has declared that the Southeast is not happy with its position in Nigeria. Ekweremadu explained that the imbalance against the Southeast has made the region unhappy in Nigeria. According to him, the imbalance had resulted in agitations stressing that Igbos could actualize their potentials in a structured Nigeria. The former Deputy Senate President spoke during the second Dim Chukwemeka Odemegu Ojukwu Memorial Lecture at the Iberian campus of Chukwemeka Omedwegu Ojukwu University. Now, Ekweremadu said that the distribution of national wealth and revenue sharing formula did not help the Igbo to harness their potentials. In other words, he's trying to make a case as to why Biafrans want to leave Biafra. Wants to leave the larger Nigeria and form their own country. And just Biafrans, you're watching me there. What are your thoughts of those sentiments by former Deputy Senate President Mr. Ike Ekweremadu? Such long names. You guys have very, very long names. It's like a compound noun or something. Yeah. Anyway, so Cameroon, court in Bur, southwest region of Cameroon, has thrown out a request by lawyers for authorities to produce Samuel Wazizi, a journalist who had been detained in Communicado for the past 2 months. The court rejected the motion filed by the lawyers on grounds that the lawyers had not followed due procedure after the latter claimed that they had not seen their clients in all the detention facilities they have been in Bwer. Samuel Wazizi, a photojournalist at a local television, CMTV, was arrested in August 2nd and detained at the Bwer police station in Bwer. And still in Cameroon, and today marks exactly 37 years since President Paul Biya became president of Cameroon, and 1 year since he embarked on a new 7-year mandate in office. Okay. So supporters of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, as has been the case in previous years, will be embarking the day with celebrations across the country. However, beyond the celebrations lie the real problems faced by the Biya regime in the various crises within the country that the country is still facing. And thank you so much. That is the latest from Africa this morning. Thank you for watching, and continue writing. I see Lamim Konate, you're saying Africa is full of drama. Please, Africa is just the gift that keep on giving, especially in some countries. It never stops. Unfortunately, this drama is just not the good one. Please, and I don't know in this regard, Mr. Konate, I don't know which one, because I've read a lot of, interesting things there that makes you just stop and wonder. So I don't know which country that took your breath away there, but thank you so much for watching. Francis Aluga, you're saying he's one of them. Who is who? Oh, the former senator. You think he's one of them? Let me see. The former Deputy Senate President, Mr. Ike Ekweremadu. He's one of who? Or are we? Oh, you're saying he's one of them that has been killing Biafra. Okay. Okay. I'll keep writing and let me know what this person did. So anyway, what he came out to say was that Biafrans, why you guys feel the way you feel is because over a long period of time, the distribution of national wealth and revenue sharing formula has not helped the Igbo to harness their potentials. So as much as he is one of them, and he was here giving a speech that I think was marking the what was it? The former Deputy Senate Speaker was speaking at the second DIM, Chukwuemeka Odemwogu Ojukwu Memorial Lecture of the Iberian, that is from Igbo, campus of Chukwuemeka Odemwogu Ojukwu University. So I'm thinking that is an Igbo thingy, right? That is from the Biafra, right? So here, while he was giving this lecture, he said that it is the uneven distribution of resources and national wealth and revenue sharing that has made the Igbos, that has curtailed the Igbos from harnessing their potentials, that has made sure that development from the Igbo has been stifled, and there has not been a free flow or a fair distribution of the national cake, as our politicians call it here. And so that is why the Biafrans are really agitating and wanting to leave the larger Nigeria. So he was giving, which I think, well, that is what he said, and he said a host of other things. But I think whatever he said here is one of the reasons why Biafrans wants to leave the larger Nigeria. He said, the distribution of the national wealth and the revenue sharing formula that has really been biased towards the side that is perceived to be the stronghold of the president of the northern part of the country, but the Igbos have been left out in this. But I think he was trying to be also very politically correct. I think owing to he served in the Senate as the deputy Senate president there in the Nigerian parliament, and so I think as much as he whatever he's saying actually could be the truth, but also I think he's trying to be politically correct here, and so he did not come out full throttle and just call a spade, but he said that it is part of the reason why Biafrans wants to leave Nigeria is the distribution of national wealth, and also because we all know that parts of Nigeria, Biafra is one of the places that has not been receiving a fair share of development compared to the rest of Nigeria. It has been lagging behind because it has not been in part and supportive of the rest, because Biafrans wants to leave Nigeria anyway. So out of that, there has been a lot of discrimination from the larger Nigeria, even when it comes to the distribution of developmental agendas. I think they usually don't have the part of the Biafrans in mind, the national government. So there has been a systematic discrimination, and this only has served to agitate more for the people of Biafra to want to leave Nigeria. So what this person here is saying, Ike Ekwe Remadu, the former deputy Senate speaker there, and he came out and said, Southeast is not happy. Hello, did he just wake up and realized that Biafrans are not happy? They have not been happy for the longest period. So now he's saying the Southeast is not happy, and they're not happy with the position, with its position in Nigeria. All right, and he continues to say, and explaining that the imbalance against the Southeast has made the region unhappy in Nigeria. So the imbalance, and I think in the imbalance, he came out to explain that the manner in which the distribution of national wealth and revenue, the formula that the national government uses to allocate resources to the Biafra land has been very unfair, and it has really stifled and curtailed and has made sure that the Igbos have not realized and harnessed their full potential. Is that true or false? The Biafrans who are watching me there. Is that true or false? He's saying that the manner in which the government of Nigeria and the other governments that have been there even before President Muhammadu Buhari came into power, the manner in which they share the revenue, the formula they use, they're making sure that the Igbos have not been able to harness their full potentials. So there seems to be a very targeted sort of, attitude towards making sure that this part of Nigeria, I think from what I'm gathering from Ike Ekwemeradu, what he's saying, there seems to be a very deliberate attempt to make sure that parts of Biafra land is stifled and Biafra land does not harness its full potential. That reminds me of what happened when before the Belgians left the Democratic Republic of Congo. Remember when they came in and even after, before they were chased out, before Lumumba, when Lumumba was still the leader there, I think the prime minister or something, the president, there in the DRC, and he really wanted to change, the DRC, and he really wanted the power to be with the people and for the people, and for the Democratic Republic of the Congolese to take charge of their country, and so that of course made the white person very, very uncomfortable because he was not playing ball with their former colonies, and so now. They were not happy. They were not happy. But when the Belgians were there, out of the 50,000 government jobs that were in the DRC, only out of the 5,000 government jobs at that time, very, very early 60s there, and the 50s, out of the 5,000 available jobs and posts in government, the black Congolese only had 2 spots. So there were no Congolese doctors, there were no Congolese qualified teachers, there were no Congolese engineers, there were no Congolese, no professionals, period. And they had 2 levels of education, or 2 types of education. That was also in South Africa during the apartheid period, where they made sure that the black people or the black South Africans did not have the exact quality of education compared to the minority whites. So that also, this system in the DRC Congo made sure that the Congolese did not really have education that would empower them. Their education was just for basic daily functioning, really, but not the one that will make sure that a Congolese is fully educated. So when the African regime came into power, and now it was time for the Belgians to leave, while they were leaving, they left with all the skills. So Congolese was left with themselves. They don't know how to operate any industry, any company that the Belgians had been operating. So it was left for its destruction. And of course, when now the leader after Lumumba's death, and we saw Mobutu Sese Seko came into power, and of course we saw with the backing of the people from the West, he was able to see this country go to the dogs, because he was just, he was their gatekeeper, right? All right, so this is what I'm seeing. Of the case of Biafra. And so this person, Mr. Ike Ekwemeradu here, is saying that, the Southeast is not happy. They're not happy. And I'm just wondering, is it something that he just realized? This is something that the government, even not just President Muhammadu Buhari, even the preceding governments, this is something they knew. They have been knowing, so that now they're stating this. And this is a person who was the former deputy Senate president. Did he ever bring these matters when he was at the helm of the leadership in that country? Did he ever agitate for the Biafrans and their rights and human rights violations and things like that? Did he ever talk about this while he was the deputy Senate president? Or is it just now that he does not have that position anymore, and he's come out and now he's speaking here? And as I said, he's just being politically correct. He did not call a spade, so he's just saying, the Southeast is very unhappy, and the revenue sharing formula did not help the Igbo to harness their potential, did not help, as if it is a past thing. And yet this is something that is happening right now. There's still discrimination. There's still targeted discrimination against that part of Nigeria, the Biafra land. So he's talking about it as if this is something that was experienced 25 years ago, and thank God today things are going on very well in this part of the country, which is not true. So that tells you they're still out of touch and out of tune with the agitations there from Biafrans there. And Francis Aluga, you're saying if he's not one of them, why not support him? Why are you not supporting Nnamdi Kanu? Mbaise Emmanuel, you're saying we are sick and tired of the country called Nigeria, and we all need Biafra. So Romy, okay. No, I'm not Linda. My name is Miriam. And you're saying... Odumegu Ojukwu was the former Biafran head of state. Yes, Ojukwu. I've seen you guys mention here. Yes, I know that. But thank you so much. And no, I'm not Linda. And the eBay makers, you're saying, give us Biafra. All right. There you go. So keep writing. And as you do that, please let me know where you're writing us from, and keep the conversation going. So we also have similar problems in Cameroon. And where is this news I read earlier from Cameroon? So anyway, the United States came out earlier, I think sometimes late last month, and they came out and said, you know what, the government of Mr. Donald Trump announced, that was last week, that administration intended to cut AGOA trade benefits for Cameroon by January 1st, 2020. Now, the AGOA is the African Growth and Opportunities Act, where allows some African countries to not to be taxed, or, the tariffs have been removed, are subsidized, so that Africans can export some of the agricultural opportunities, products to the U.S. So this will allow the expansion and the growth of agriculture in Africa. Tax-free, for the AGOA, for the African states that are in this agreement, who are involved in this act. So Cameroon was one of the countries that was, benefiting from this AGOA trade agreement here. But now President Trump came out and said that come January 1st, Cameroon will not enjoy this, as they said this continues due to the persistent human rights violations there in the country. And also earlier this year, Donald Trump came out and pulled the military help that the country had been offering to the Cameroonian army, because they're saying this army we're helping, but it is the same army that is going out there and committing human rights abuses, so we are not going to support it. So they removed the U.S. army that were offering the training for the Cameroonian soldiers, and also removed any kind of help to the Cameroonian army. So that is that, and now we see they've come out. So I don't know if it is safe to say that President Paul Biya's goose is slowly coming home to cook. I'm not sure. But will this also make other players, the EU, come out and speak about it? Britain, that has been... Britain, that is also part of this, because, the Anglophones, they were the Anglophones, the Ambazonians, they were colonized by the British. So British cannot escape its role in what has become the crisis in Ambazonia today. And it is interesting the way British has been very aloof in this. I think they just don't want to be in the middle of what is happening here, but I think they have a responsibility and a role to play. And when you see Britain coming out and issuing statements, they'll try to be very politically correct, and they'll come out and say things like, we are asking both sides to try and bring peace. We're asking both sides to try and stop killing each other. While we can see very clearly that, especially when you see that the government forces have come in the Anglophone region and really killed a lot of people, banned hospitals, done what, you can clearly see this is from this side, it's from Paul Biya's side. But the British comes out and they're like, violence should stop from both sides. So it is this blanket condemnation that has made Paul Biya's government to be getting away with all these heinous acts it's been doing, and all these violence it has been meting for the people of Ambazonia, because if you give a blanket condemnation, the perpetrator gets away. So it should stop. Let's call a spade, like in the case of Biafra, like in the case of Ambazonia, like in the case of South Sudan, which we shall be looking at shortly. It is this blanket glossing of things, so sweeping things in the rag. Or, it's a quote I once read somewhere. from, I don't know, anonymous writer or somebody, I can't remember, but he said the beginning of wisdom is calling things by its name, is saying it as it is. So if we continue with not calling things for what they are, or calling people out for what they've really done, or saying it as it is, and that is how dictators are formed, as in the case of President Paul Biya, who today, as we will see, is celebrating 37 years in office, and that is how they'll continue getting away with the heinous acts and the criminal activities that they are doing in their countries. So the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their names. All right, and stop glossing matters. Stop trying to camouflage. Stop being trying to be politically correct, and just calling things as they are. So now the Human Rights Watch have come out and they've lauded and welcomed a recent move by the United States to push the Cameroonian government to act on human rights abuses. But just removing that and removing Cameroon from the AGOA Act come January 1st, 2020, will this be enough pressure? Do we need more players to come in and push President Paul Biya? Do we need other countries that have been aiding, especially I think a country like France, should they come in and take a very hard stand against the presidency of Paul Biya and what he's doing for the Anglophones especially? I think perhaps that will have a more effect. So when the US is coming by itself, it pulled saw just there earlier this year. We didn't see a lot of things stop, so now it's come out and will remove Cameroon from the countries who are benefiting from the AGOA trade benefit, which is the African Growth and Opportunities Act. By removing Cameroon from as one of the beneficiaries of this, will that go to affect Cameroon's economy? How much does Cameroon gain from this AGOA agreement? How much is the country gaining, and how much do they stand to lose? Is it enough that will cause President Paul Biya to reconsider some of these things, or pay attention to what is happening? Of course, the national dialogue that the president called for, that happened, I think, starting 30th of September and went on for 5 days, I think. We're still waiting to see how he will implement. But the major things that the Ambazonians had hoped, or the Anglophones had hoped, that the dialogue will touch on, never really touched on anything. The people that are representatives of the Anglophones that were supposed to have attended this national dialogue were not there to be seen, as you've said here, and you know that some are serving life sentences. So the whole process, I think, was a flop from the start, and because it was not going to meet its mandate. But according to the President Paul Biya and his office, they said the dialogue went on so very well. Or as President Trump would say, in the name of the Ukrainian phone call he had with the Ukrainian president, the phone call was perfect. That is what he keeps saying. So I think, according to Paul Biya, the dialogue was very perfect. I think they came there with a I think agenda already. So I don't think the government came there open-hearted and open-minded to really want to solve the crisis in the Anglophone region. So I think they failed in that regard. But as it is, President Paul Biya came out and said he's very happy with the way things happened. He's very happy with the way the conversation, with the way the dialogue went on. And so we're waiting to see, and it appeared as though the government was just having a conversation by itself, because even the people who purported to be coming there and speaking on behalf of Ambazonia, I don't know what kind of what they presented there. I don't think very much, because the probably had said we shall not be talking about secession. What we have to talk about is maybe the language problem and this and security and what, and perhaps we leave the Anglophones to start teaching continue teaching in English and not trying to impose French on them, or we still find a way of French and English to coexist. And the fact that we're sitting here fighting about foreign languages, I think there's somewhere there's a clip by Professor Pierre Lumumba, and he's saying it's quite bizarre that in an African country we identify ourselves as Anglophones and Francophones, and we have our own indigenous languages which we should be celebrating. And now we are fighting because of our foreign languages. It's ridiculous. But the matter of Ambazonia and the Anglophone region, I think, goes beyond a language. It's not just a language problem. You know, that is just the tip of the iceberg. But there's more to it. It's also the systematic, discrimination by the government of Paul Biya. I mean, 37 years, Mr. Paul Biya is celebrating today as the president of Cameroon. 37 years. And the guy does not seem to want to leave anytime soon. He's one of the longest serving presidents in Africa, coming in second after president of Equatorial Guinea. Yes, Equatorial Guinea, that is where Yaya Jammeh ran for asylum, yes, there. And then now President, Paul Biya, he comes in second. This is ridiculous. And I think over time, even the French part of Cameroon, the Francophone, they'll get tired of him. I think it's just a ticking time bomb there with what has been happening, and there are a lot of unrest in the continent and the yearning and the wanting for change, especially by the younger generations that are coming up in Africa. I think Mr. Paul Biya's time, the clock is ticking, and soon and very soon, even the Francophones there in Cameroon will start thinking, no. I was reading another article by the celebrated football player from Cameroon, Mr. Eto'o, Samuel Eto'o. And he mentioned something to do with politics. I don't know if he's interested. I didn't read the whole of it. It was just a headline. And I thought, okay, I thought I'll come back to it. I was preparing for something, it escaped my mind. So perhaps I'll go look for that article. I think it was on the BBC Online, and see, does he have plans to run for the presidency in that country? Does he want to start a revolution? What? I'm not saying that is what he said. I'm trying to understand, coming from a younger person like Eto'o and having gone through I think the rest of his years as Paul Biya being the president of Cameroon, I will be interested to know what really his thoughts are. So, okay, so Lamin Konate, you're saying many scholars have argued that the future is in Africa and may lead to another scramble of Africa. We're seeing that happening. Have you seen the air trips our leaders have been making out there? Like these key economic powers and world powers out there, I think they're even forming special ministries for Africa to look into Africa affairs, to look into their relationship with Africa. No kidding. I'm sure the countries that actually have that, like special dockets, only to that are responsible to dealing with that country and Africa and its interest in Africa. Japan has that TICAD that happened, I think, here in Kenya. Is it in Kenya a few months ago that all heads of state came? And China has one. Was it? TICAD is for Japan, right? Oh, no. The leaders went to Japan. I remember when Biafrans wanted to go and protest in Japan. I think, yes, if I'm not wrong, please correct me. Because the leaders, they're having that annual meeting, heads of state between Japan and Africa over there. And China has one. All right, China has one. And now Russia formed one. Remember 2 weeks ago, our leaders went to Sochi in Russia? Russia just formed one. Yes. And now we've seen, and then after that, our leaders went to Qatar. And now, of course, US has one. And they're worried sick because of the influence. Having now Russia come into play, now they'll start bringing the proxy wars here because, Russia and US has been at loggerheads for a very long time. And, Mr. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, is a very special one there. So, Lamin Konate, you think it will lead to another scramble of Africa? I think another scramble of Africa is already here with us. is right here. We are seeing it. Now it appears to be subtle. It comes in the name of infrastructural loans and improving our economies and this and that. And what really was striking for me when Russia was having this meeting of Russia and African heads of state, what President Vladimir Putin said was, I think I read it and then I read it and I tried to internalize it and I was worried. He said the help that Russia is seeking to give and the partnership that Russia is seeking to give to Africa, it will come without conditions. And you know that how it started with China. And we see how China has made inroads in Africa. But at the end of the day, all these developmental agendas and things, China stands to gain in a big scheme of things. So when Russia came out and said, oh, we'll come in and we don't have any conditions. And of course, many of African leaders who cannot access help from the other Western side of the world because of the many conditions that are attached to this help. Okay, we need to know when it comes to governance, or how does your country rate human rights abuse, what is the record, democracy, how is your country doing on that? And if all the list checks at least average or just close to average, because anyway, a lot of African countries don't really meet a lot of this, so it becomes very difficult because these loans or this help that come from the Western world, the US, the EU, it comes with a lot of, preconditions that our leaders are not very comfortable with. So Russia saw that and they said, you know what, now let's just come in and we're going to help them or give these loans or whatever package and whatever they want to present to Africa. And they told our leaders that we shall do this, but without conditions. I don't even think they realize, our leaders, what a heavy price tag at the end of the day that will be for Africa. So the scramble of Africa is here with us again. And we should worry as Africans about the future of this continent. But he's saying, but this time for business or investment. This dream, however, can be actualized by the sole benefit of Africans, visionary leaders. And you're saying you're watching from Crowley in the UK. Thank you so much, Lamine Konate. And you're saying I keep up the good job. Thank you. And thank you for watching. We do this because you guys are here. When you come online, you're here, you're watching us. And when you go live, of course, right now, we're also live from our sister station in Southern Cameroon, Broadcasting, Corporation there from Southern Cameroon. But we thank you so much to our online family because we do this for you and the rest of the people who are watching us across the world. And UK, your prayers, you're saying UK has taken oil contract in Ambazonia. That is why they're very quiet. They're very selective in the manner in which they address the Ambazonian matter. That is because they already taken some oil from Ambazonia. They have some interest there, of course. Okay, so Francis Aluga, you're saying Nigeria can do whatever they want, but Biafra must come because we are not Nigerian. God bless Nazi Nabdi Kanu. And Baise Emmanuel is saying there's no alternative for Biafra freedom, and we will not stop our demand for Biafra until we get our Biafra. Okay, you're saying you're listening from Austria. Okay, thank you so much. They're from Austria. And okay, hope you're saying a good morning from here. It is a good afternoon from here. About 40 minutes to the top of the hour. We only have 20 minutes to go, so I'll try to hurry up. We still have a lot to talk about, and we have to talk about the countdown. That is in South Sudan, 6 days to go. And President Kiir thinks now it is time to build a huge parliament to accommodate all these members of parliament and all these politicians that they want to nominate to parliament. President Salva Kiir. Priorities. 6 days to go. Can we get peace first? Can we sign the unity government? Can we have the other person come to Juba first? Then let's talk about expanding parliament and how many people we want to, in parliament. I think those are the names that maybe he's been waiting for. But can we have that guy? Can we have Machar in Juba first? Yes? Okay. Amber Pat, you're saying good morning from South Korea. Okay, hope you're saying good morning from there, and good morning to you, and thank you so much wherever you're watching us from. So we were looking at that report from Cameroon, from the Human Rights Watch group has come out to laud this report. Welcome the move by the United States, who is planning to remove Cameroon as one of the African beneficiary countries from the AGOA trade agreement there. Will that affect the economy of Cameroon enough that may want President Paul Biya to change? And as I have said there, President Paul Biya marks exactly 37 years since becoming president of Cameroon, and 1 year since he embarked on a 7-year mandate in office. And I think that is what brought chaos from last year's election, because I think they changed the constitution to allow the president to run for 7 years per term. So imagine if a president is going for 2 terms or 3 terms. 7 times, that's just too much. So he changed that. So as usual, this day is expected to normally marked with celebrations and all that across the country. But I think if President Paul Biya is wise, this is not the time he will have pomp and color and celebrations in the country as things right now after the national dialogue that was a complete fail. I don't think this is the time that he needs to go out and start celebrating and all colorful and all that, when he has other very important and urgent things that he should be addressing for the conflict with the Anglophones and the issues that are affecting Cameroonians in general. I think this is not the time, Mr. President, to go out there and have all these carnivore and celebrations and toasting. And no, this is not the time. Can we focus on what is important? And so I'm hoping this will not be the case, because normally this day has been marked with a lot of celebrations across the world, not across the world, but across the country. So I'm not sure yet if the celebrations have started. But I don't want to come here tomorrow and say, and this day was now marked with pomp and color. That is not the news I want to read here today. I want to read something else that is different. I want to read his response from the sanctions, from the next sanctions that the country is facing from the United States. I want to hear if he's planning to do anything about his human rights, report and in the country that is very appalling. I want to know what he plans to do, and I also want to know if after 37 years in office in Cameroon, and which he's failed to improve even the economy of that country, does he even plan to retire? What are the plans for the future? Those are the things I want to hear and know, and that is what I want to know, and I want to talk about here tomorrow, not come here tomorrow and say, and then there was pop and color and celebrations across the country. I think, should he do that, or should the party go ahead and do that? That will go to show how much the leadership of Paul Biya is completely out of touch with the issues that are at the ground and the things that Cameroonians or even Anglophones would consider would want the leadership of the country to have as a priority. All right? Enough with Paul Biya and his very interesting leadership there. So now, the latest from the Nile River dispute. Of course, foreign ministers from Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan are in the U.S. capital, Washington, today, and they will be having these talks that are being mediated by the U.S. Remember, Ethiopia wants to construct a Grand Renaissance Dam on its part of the river, which should it be completed, will be Africa's largest hydroelectric power station, and Egypt has come out and said no, because should they allow Ethiopia to go on with this plan, then that will mean that Ethiopia will have a lot of control of the flow of the river, and this happens to be the only fresh water source for Egypt. So it's a lot going there. But as I expressed my opinion here yesterday, what I found to be not adding up for me as an African is the fact that our AU chairperson, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the president of Egypt, thought it was very wise to seek for a mediating person or a neutral person, or to seek for help, period, from outside of Africa. like, why are you even the chairperson of AU? I think we need a new leadership in the African Union. If the leader of African Union, the chairperson that we have put there, that was elected and by other African heads of state, is the one that has no confidence, because by him going out there to the US to seek help from the US, that the US might come in here and mediate over a dispute that Egypt has with other African countries, not some Middle East country, or no, not even with Turkey. Then now we'll perhaps need somebody from who is not in the Middle East or from Africa. We needed somebody that is neutral, which is very difficult to find in that situation. But a dispute between Egypt and other African countries, but he thought the US would come in and mediate. That really got me very disturbed as an African. And that went to show that even El-Sisi himself does not have a faith in an institution that he is chairing on behalf of Africans. So for that reason alone, I'm not saying go out there and file a petition to remove him as the chair of the African Union. I don't know if that would work. But hey, that was very disappointing for me as an African, and I don't know why he thought that was necessary. All right. Top deck, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for asking. And things are going on very well with us both. Dr. Matanga is caught up somewhere doing some important things that he needed to have attention to today, so he's not with me. But we have been doing well. If you can go and read the comments there, the people who are engaging, so far so good. And so, yes, so let's just see the talks and what will come out of the talks that are expected to happen there today. And hopefully when we come here back tomorrow, we will have something nice to talk about over that Nile River dispute between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. Now let's look at, of course, the government of Zimbabwe has fired 77 doctors. We'll look at that. But let's look at South Sudan now. And before we look at South Sudan, something very interesting. Now, Sudan's Forces of Freedom and Change, the coalition movement behind the massive protests, which engulfed the North African country, eventually leading to the ousting of former Sudan's strongman, Omar al-Bashir, has now come out and said they really have no qualms having former President Omar al-Bashir being taken to the ICC. They are actually in support of that move. So whoever who is agitating for former president to be taken to the ICC, they are in support of that. How very interesting, because they want the former president to be held accountable over the death that happened, I think in 2003 in Darfur, that nobody has been held accountable to date, which is the tragedy in Sudan, but also in a lot of African countries. We see the deaths in the different African countries, the deaths in Biafra, the deaths in Ambazonia, the deaths that through what was happening, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, which I think should, those are crimes against humanity, and maybe South Africans need somebody to point them towards the ICC so that they stop with that foolishness, and others across the continent, and they get away scot-free because nobody holds them into account. A president somewhere, Mr. Paul Biya somewhere, will be sitting down and thinking, okay, so Omar al-Bashir, after all, killed under his watch, this many people died. And, nobody, fine, they removed him from office, but nobody, the army is protecting him. They will not allow him to go to the ICC, or nobody will have him take responsibility. And even the cases he's facing today in the Sudan's court, nowhere in the charge sheet is the Darfur massacre mentioned. And I feel very sad because people lost their lives. South Sudanese, they lost their lives there in Darfur, and nobody has been held accountable to date, which is very sad. So now, these Sudan's Forces of Freedom and Change, they're coming out and they're saying we don't have a problem. In fact, he should be at the ICC like yesterday. So let's just see when this Sudan's Force of Freedom and Change, they're coming out to make such statements. Who could be behind this? who could be asking them to call for this, to make such calls? And, Bashir, after he was forced in the office in April, he's been walking around with the warrant of arrest from the ICC for the longest period. So let's just see. But of course, the army came out and said, even after they ousted him out, and they said one of the things they will not do, they will not hand over Mr. Omar al-Bashir to the ICC. And so the newly appointed Prime Minister, Mr. Abdel Hamdok, has been trying to gain support across some African countries and across the world to try to get the US to remove Sudan from the list of the countries that are enabling terrorism across the world. But the US has come out and said, fine, we've had those calls, but no, we are not doing that yet, because I think, and I've always said here and maintained that, I think what they're using as a leverage is they want former president to be tried at the ICC. Then they can remove Sudan in the list of countries that are sponsoring terrorism across the globe. Because remember, when Sudan is in that list, so that comes especially with a huge economic disadvantage to the country, because which investor from the US would want to come and invest in Sudan, a country that is on the list of countries that are sponsoring terrorism across the world? Which country, which investor would want to come there and do that? Which country would want to trade freely outside there with Sudan? Very few. So that has really made the economy of Sudan suffer, being on that list. That means this comes with some sanctions. This comes with some caution. This comes with some things that will hurt the economy and has been hurting the economy of Sudan. All right. So it is very important that Sudan is removed from this list of the countries that are sponsoring terrorism. So Mr. Hamdok went and presented the new political developments in Sudan and said, you know what? Yes, we ousted the former leader. Yes, we have agreed, even the military junta, and you're working on this 3-year transitional period, and then we'll have election and you'll do this. And what do they have the new constitution? No, because I think it was suspended during that time of protest and all that. So I think they're working on it, and they were not really agreeing on the major how the constitution will be constituted, because the part of the army was saying no, it should be based on the Sharia, and the protesters are more liberal. It was saying no, we cannot base the country's constitution on the Sharia. So there were other issues that really they were not agreeing on. So I hope they're working on the country's constitution, and because right now the constitution in Sudan has been suspended. So now, until they're able to do that, until they're able to meet this demand by the US to hand Mr. Omar al-Bashir to the ICC, I think Sudan will continue being in that list of countries that are sponsoring terrorism across the world, and their economy and other sectors will continue to get hurt. And so the Coalition of Freedom for Change is now saying we do not have a problem should the former president be handed over to the ICC. Matter of fact, we are happy should that happen. Okay, those are quite a new development there from Sudan. And now 6 days to go. Mahadere, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much, Tap Dak. You're saying, Mariam. It's Miriam, but thank you. You know what? We are not independent within our own continent, and we have confidence in ourselves. Yeah, as in the case of the chairperson of the AU, Mr. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the president of Egypt, seeking for mediation from the US in regards to a problem that involves Egypt with other African countries. That makes me very uncomfortable. And in South Sudan, 6 days to go, and now President Salva Kiir has instructed the Speaker of the National Parliament to construct a new parliamentary facility that will accommodate additional members of parliament. I don't know if this is the most pressing issue right now in South Sudan. President Salva Kiir, you surprise me here every single day. What I want to hear coming from the mouth of President of South Sudan, with 6 days to go until the formation of the unity government, what I expect to hear from President Salva Kiir, which I think by now he should be holding like daily press conferences, updating us, people who have interest in the peace of South Sudan and the rest of South Sudanese in the world and other Africans who care for this country and everybody else, all people care about South Sudan as a country and their people across the globe, all right? But what we want to hear from President Salva Kiir, which I say by now he should be he should be having his press person, even if it's not him, just updating the rest of the world and South Sudanese in particular about what is happening in South Sudan. 6 days to go, about the progress, what is happening, the issues that are as the sticking points, what is the government doing to make sure that they are being addressed, and the insecurity that has made Mr. Riek Machar not to want to return to Juba. How far is the government making sure, to make sure that this has been addressed and this has been taken care of? That is what I want to hear. You know, the boundaries, that also is part of the major things that is causing a dispute there. What is happening? How are they planning to handle it? Should Dr. Machar come back and sign this at the end of the day or the deadline? What will happen? That is what I want to hear. I want to hear updates in regards to the implementation of the peace deal. But now President Salva Kiir is coming out as if nothing else important should be happening in South Sudan, and saying, you know what we need? I think we need a bigger parliament, which I think is okay, but right now should not be atop of the agenda of what is urgent in South Sudan. All right? And this is, I don't know how big South Sudan is, but currently the country has 450 members of parliament. Here we have, do you know how many we have here? And as I was reading the news earlier, 40 constituencies could be scraped after the census that we just had and the results that came 2 days ago. From the numbers and the statistics and the population statistics that is out, appears that some constituencies will get rid of. And as a Kenyan who is tired of paying tax to these members of parliament, that is something that I absolutely support. Of course, the politicians in this country will not agree with that, because some will lose their jobs. 450 members of parliament in a country like Sudan. For what? And now they're saying that is not enough. They need more members of parliament. And that the parliament will balloon to 550 members from 450. Oh, Salva Kiir and whoever who is involved in this, I don't know. They're saying we need 100 more members. When even the 450 members have not been paid, because they're part of the civil servants who have not been paid for how long now? It is in Parliament of South Sudan in June that the members of Parliament even refused to sit down and listen for the reading of the country's budget for the year 2019-2020, because he said we cannot sit here and listen to the Minister of Finance come here and talk to us about the budgetary of this country while we have not been paid. By then it was 6 months. And as if that was not enough, 450 members then, now they want to add another 550 members of parliament. Who told the leadership of South Sudan that having more people will solve the problem of the South Sudan? I know we talk about the inclusiveness and a government that is inclusive, and I think that is a very delicate balance that we're even struggling with here. Even in Kenya, it's a problem, because sometimes we feel we're not, when even cabinet positions, the president comes out and make nominations, we feel no, that does not represent the true face of Kenya. But somehow it's a problem, it's a challenge that even as Kenya we're still grappling with. But in whose wisdom did South Sudan leadership decide, okay, fine, so this is the amount of deputy presidents? How many deputy presidents are in South Sudan? Has that helped to solve the problem in South Sudan? How many members of parliament? 450. So by adding an extra 100 that you can't even take care of, will that solve the problem in South Sudan? What is it with South Sudan leadership and numbers? Come on now. So the ruling party will have 332 nominated members of parliament. Of course, elections cannot be done in South Sudan right now because the environment, it just can't happen. And then the South Sudan Alliance, opposition alliance, I think will have, SPLM-IO, I think that is from Riek Machar, will have 128 members. And the Kir will have 332 members. I don't know how they arrived in these figures. That is why Kir does not, that is why Machar does not want to give the names, because Kir will have 332, Machar will have 128. And then the South Sudan Opposition Alliance will nominate 50 members, and other opposition parties will have 30 MPs, and former detainees shall nominate 10 members. This is even too much. So right now, the members of parliament conduct their sittings at the Freedom Hall, a huge white tent opposite Dr. John Garang. And all these things and all these plans will be brought to naught if this peace accord, this peace agreement is not adhered to, is not implemented, the unity government is not formed, and in the name of the unity government, I don't think the people of South Sudan will appreciate this ballooned, legislative assembly. I think this is just too much, because even the members of parliament that are there right now in South Sudan have not been paid for months to the end. So I don't know if this will be the solution. I don't know why they always have to, I don't know, the leadership of South Sudan and numbers and thinking that this will be part of the solution in the name of inclusivity. I don't think this is the right formula. Somebody needs to go there and just help them out with the matter of inclusivity, because I think by this, I think perhaps they feel that, we will be very included. It's not about positions. Like I mentioned there, the country already has, I don't know how many deputy presidents trying to have everybody there. But still, it has not solved the problem in South Sudan. It goes deeper than just have everybody in parliament. And even in this, I don't think it will help in everything. So 6 days to go, nothing yet from the government of South Sudan. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what are the plans. So I'm just hoping that the leadership of South Sudan will come out very quickly, very soon, and give us an update. I want to know, like I've said, I am invested. I'm investors. I am invested. So I want to know what's happening. Mr. Kira, we want to know what is the latest. Can you have your press person come out and speak to the rest of us? We want to report things direct from you and know what's really happening. The update and how far and the latest in terms of the implementation of the peace agreement. Please, we need to know. Ogebe Omoto Chan, you're saying ICC is booming in Sudan, Khartoum. Let Mr. President Omar to be handed over to ICC. And Peter Anokam, you're saying all hail Biafra. And Mahdere Andom, thank you so much. I think I talked about you earlier. Thank you so much. So we've looked at a lot of things here this morning. A recap for those who are joining us, because I'm done actually. I'm supposed to be signing off. So we looked at the River Nile dispute between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, and foreign ministers from this country are already in Washington, that is the U.S. capital, to try. The U.S. is mediating between this matter. We also, when I was going through the news, Rwanda, 6 British politicians have written to the Rwandan president asking him to release former military officers from prison, that is Frank Rusagara, who was once defense attaché to the UK, and Tom Byabagwa, who was arrested. They were arrested 5 years ago, and the government of Rwanda had charged them with spreading rumors and tarnishing the image of Rwanda, which is ridiculous. But yes, in Rwanda, you are arrested over very flimsy, issues there or matters there. Anyway, and also in Zimbabwe, the government of Zimbabwe has fired 77 doctors who have been taking part in a strike since September over pay. I don't know if that will solve the problems in Zimbabwe. And also today, the government workers, that is the civil servants in Zimbabwe, are taking out to the streets. They are protesting again. We've looked at Biafra and how Ike Ekweradu, a former deputy Senate president, has declared that the Southeast is not happy with this position in Nigeria. And And now he was saying that a part of the reason why is because the distribution of the national wealth and revenue sharing formula did not help the Igbo to harness their potentials. I think he just woke up and realized the Igbos are not happy, which I don't know how. I don't know under which rock he's been living in. And also we looked at today marks exactly 37 years since Paul Biya came into power, and he has served Cameroon for 37 years. And in those 37 years, today also marks 1 year since he embarked on a new 7-year mandate in office there. So Cameroons, do you have anything to smile about out there? And also we looked at Liberia, and now Liberians are stuck in long queues at cash machines as many have run out of banknotes. I did not get time to get into the details of that. Perhaps we'll do that tomorrow. And in Somalia, the flooding there is causing havoc there in Somalia. And in Burkina Faso, France has announced a new joint military operation with Burkina Faso, a country suffering from nearly daily terror. Actually, it's daily terror attacks. Tell me which day have come here and we've not even yesterday. Was it 49 soldiers that were killed? So it's nearly a daily terror attack there in Burkina Faso. And Cameroon, of course, international rights group Human Rights Watch have come out and welcomed a recent move by the United States to push the Cameroonian government to act on human rights abuses by, saying that they will intend to cut AGOA trade benefits from Cameroon come January 1st, 2020. Will that have any impact on the economy of Cameroon that will push Paul Biya enough to want to do something over that? And of course, we've seen in Sudan's Forces of Freedom and Change, the coalition movement behind the massive protest, which part of the protest that removed Omar al-Bashir in power, now came out and said, you know what, we do not have a problem for Omar al-Bashir to be handed over to the ICC. Actually, that is what now they're calling for. And of course, we were just looking at 6 days to go, and now President of South Sudan is asking the speaker for the country to construct a new parliament facility, as if the country even has enough money to construct a parliament. What? Does South Sudan has enough money to construct a new parliament? And it's refusing to pay civil servants, and it's refusing. The government is refusing to release the full amount of money that is required for the peace agreement. Mr. President Salva Kiir, priorities. And what else did you look at? Yeah, in a nutshell, that is what we are looking at this morning. Thank you so much, wherever you're joining us from. This afternoon, 6 minutes past 1 p.m. here in Kenya. So thank you so much, and hopefully we can meet tomorrow here for another edition of Good Morning Africa. Ogebe Omot, Peter Anokan, who else? Mahadere Andom, Tap Dak, and the rest of you. I appreciate your company. Let's meet here tomorrow. For now, I love you for watching. Bye-bye.